Hi there, and welcome to Draw With Me. I'm Danny Gregory, and first of all, how many amazing and amazingly better than one I did versions of making a cappuccino that we just saw at the beginning. Yes, last week was a bit of a fiasco. It was fun, it was funny, but my coffee making techniques were called into question by large numbers of people. So don't come to my house for coffee. Today is going to be a slightly different version of Draw With Me, and I wanted to tell you about it in advance because it's possible that you may not want to stay. I know a lot of people come to Draw With Me like I do to relax, have a nice fun time, and just do a bit of drawing, hang out. And today is going to be a bit different just because we are going to do a bit of drawing, we are going to hang out, but we're also going to talk about some some topics that are actually quite serious and may actually be upsetting in some ways to people. We're going to talk about challenges that young artists face. We're going to talk about depression. We're going to talk about anxiety. We're going to talk about substance abuse. And we're going to talk about death. Those are all elements today. And if those are things that you just do not want to deal with today, I totally understand. In which case, there's probably 100 previous episodes of Draw With Me. Just watch that this week and come back next week and we'll talk about something else. But if you would like to remain, I'd like to talk about a young artist and his story, and I'd like to talk about what we can learn from him and what we can do in response to his work and to his legacy, really. And that is, his name is Amos Burkhart, and he's a young artist who lost his life quite recently. And I wanted to introduce you to his art, and I want to tell you about a project that I'm involved with that I'd like to involve you with as well. So please make your decision about whether you want to stay or not, or leave at any time. It's fine. It's not going to be super heavy. That's not the point. But it is going to touch on those kinds of things, and I just thought it would be responsible to let you know about that in advance. We weren't going to be, just talking about drawing. We're going to talk about really the issues that face artists, and that's one of the things is artists are different in some ways from other people. I think that there's a myth that artists are more likely to be crazy or more likely to be addicts than the average person, and that actually isn't true at all. There's actually no correlation between creativity and mental illness and substance abuse. There's a coincidental one, but the fact is that that artists and creative people in general are sensitive, and I don't mean sensitive as in they need to be protected and they're delicate flowers. I don't mean that. I mean we creative people are sensitive to what's going on around us. That's what feeds our art, right? Is the fact that we're aware of things, we're noticing things, and I think that there's a tendency there's this kind of myth that artists are heads in the clouds, or we're on another planet. And I've talked about this before. I think that the opposite is true, that artists are actually much more engaged, much more finely tuned to what they see, to what they feel inside, to how others react to them. We are more finely tuned mechanisms. And sometimes, if there are things in addition to this kind of natural inclination that artists have that are going on with us, it can become really problematic, right? Because we're even more likely to be triggered by things. So, I think we want to think about, as Chris just pointed out, artists feel the world. It's true. We feel the world. That's what we're doing ultimately. That's the purpose of art making. At really every level is to say, this is what I see. This is what I feel. And I'm going to share it with you. That's really what it is, right? People misunderstand that. They think this is the picture that I made. But really what we want to do is we want to say, this is who I am. This is what I see. This is what I think is important. And I want you to share in it with me and see, do you feel that too? Do you agree with that? Or maybe you'd never noticed that before. And maybe you will be enhanced. Your life will be made richer by seeing it through my eyes. And so I want to talk about Amos, Amos was a kid who was obviously artistic and creative from when he was really little. He was a very funny kid. He just observed, and he was around when we would see him like when in situations with adults, and he could always tell, like he would say funny things, he would notice funny things, and a lot of times a group of adults together with a little kid, they don't notice what the little kid is even seeing and observing. But little kids have big ears and big eyes, and they're noticing what's going on, and that was always the case with him, that he was paying attention and he was interpreting it, and he would come up with really hilarious insights into the stuff that he saw. But when he was by the time he became a teenager, he was really started to show himself as an artist, and he was he grew up in a relatively small rural place in Pennsylvania, but he he was becoming like a sophisticated artist when he was 14, 15 years old, and making a lot of art. And when he was, I think, 16 maybe? 16 or 17, he was enrolled in a program at Cal Arts, which is a really prestigious school in California. And so over the summer, he learned a lot about really art making as it's done by professional artists. He learned about animation. He learned more and more how to think like an artist, and he really started to evolve and to show what he was capable of. And then he started to apply for art schools, and he applied to so many art schools and got into all of them and got scholarships to many of them. I mean, serious major scholarships. And art schools saw incredible potential in what he had already done. And his art was really mature and really emotional, original, and communicative, really conveyed stuff. And so, it was clear that he was going places. Unfortunately, at the same time, this is more or less his, when he was 17, he also started to develop depression, social anxiety, gender dysmorphia, and he also developed substance abuse problems. And he eventually his parents sent him to treatment centers. He went to several really prestigious places to get treatment, but I think he was in one in Florida for like 6 months. Is that true? I can't remember the exact details of it, but oh, good. Anne is here. Anne is from the Amos Burkhart Foundation, and she's an old friend of mine and JJ's, and she has taken Amos's legacy, which we'll talk about in a minute, and made something really spectacular out of it. So here's Amos, like, on the one hand, with 1 foot into the future, the opportunity to go to so many great places to study art, and also being encouraged and supported in doing that by his family and by the art education world. So getting everything that a young artist needs, and yet at the same time wrestling with these demons and these terrible problems that were, he and his family, he was getting all the support and treatment that he needed, but he was still struggling with these problems. And ultimately, the summer before he was going to finally go to the Monster Art College, which is a great art school in New England, he had an accident and passed away, 19 years old. And it was basically, it's a bit of a mystery as to what exactly happened. It was basically, from what I understand about it, from what I've read about it, it was caused by prescription medication and just a situation where he actually drowned at the beach. So it was absolutely shocking to all of us. I mean, unimaginable. I mean, we all knew that, yes, there'd been some struggles, but to suddenly find that this kid who was like this bright light, this amazing kid with amazing potential, was lost. And he was just a couple years younger than my son, who had also just been in art school. And I just, as you can imagine, we all just felt this incredible sense of loss on so many levels. It was just horrible. And the next thing was that that Anne and Dane, who were his parents, decided to put on, for the memorial service, they wanted to have it be about his art. So they started to gather up art, and they kept uncovering more and more art. And they ultimately found 500 works of art that he had made, 500 works of art in the 2 or 3 years. I mean, and everything, paintings, drawings, he did incredible life drawing. He made oil paintings, he made animations, he composed music. I mean, he was just creative on all levels. And we went to this huge, beautiful church, and they had this art hanging on rails up to the ceiling all through the room. And it was, I mean, the first time that any of us, probably even including his parents, had ever seen this body of work all together. All of this art stretching up to the sky. And we spent, the first hour or so just wandering around looking at all this art and of course thinking about it, thinking about why was this exhibition happening. And it was just incredible. So I want to just show you some of his art, and then I'll talk a bit more about why I'm showing it to you also. So you'll see, I mean, there's so many different forms of it. This is, I guess it's a watercolor. Just so much complexity, beautiful color, incredible emotional power to these things as well. And also such rich variety. You'll see as we go through the different styles that he was exploring. I think he had already had great technical ability. And some of the stuff he was doing when he was 14 or 15 years old, making some of these paintings. I mean, to me, that's a painting that you would see in a museum and not think it was out of place. I mean, that's the power of these things and the depth. And combining words, there's also words. Some of these are pages from his sketchbooks. You can see a lot of these on his website. I put a link down below, and you can go and see more of this. It's a big Instagram account. I thought these were amazing too. These are life drawings, but look at the complexity of these. To me, I've never seen anything quite like this, where you pick one part of the figure and you just develop it with these incredible lines. It's really beautiful. Zoetropes, yes, that's what, yeah, there was also animation that's tied to it as well. And then these thin men, he made a lot of these thin kind of creatures that are, I mean, I just thought this was fantastic. But also like so emotional too, these empty skulls and long intertwining figures that are all kind of blocking each other. Just so beautiful. And then, I mean, they're all emotional. That to me is the through line. The visual styles change, the colors, but the feeling is so powerful in all of them, right? There he is. So this is Amos, the year that he died. You can see that he's fun and lively. It's so sad in a way that he's now tied to sadness, that he, you know, that's what we think of him. We think of him as being defined in some senses by the fact that he died. But you do think like, well, where would he be? You know, like where would Egon Schiele be? Where would Vincent van Gogh be? You know, if this tragedy hadn't cut it short, it accomplished so much in a short time. This is his headstone. Is it a headstone or is it a memorial plaque? But also this thought, stay alive, make art. That's really a key part of it, is the message that ultimately Anne and Dane want to leave us with is stay alive and make art. That it's possible to do that, that it doesn't, it's a plaque in a garden, I'm sorry, yes. So this is a self-portrait, and I'm going to come back to this picture in a second to talk about it. So the foundation that that has been set up in his name is, I think, a really wonderful thing, and it's designed basically to support young artists and students. So to help get scholarships for students, to help students who are struggling with addiction, and to support things that would have supported Amos as well. I think is really the idea, is to help people to break through this. So, you know, really, how can we as fellow artists, you know, embrace this message that says, you know, that life is important, that life, of course, goes without saying, but also that we as artists need to embrace life, and we need to make art that celebrates it. And that to me is his legacy, is a reminder that that art is this really powerful enabling force, and we need to support it in other people, support other people who are doing it, and we need to support it in ourselves, because we as a species kill artists all the time. We make artists feel like they are outsiders. We make it so hard to be an artist, not just financially, but also just to do it for ourselves. And I feel like that is what I've been talking about for a couple of decades, is it's up to each of us to figure out how to empower the artist in us to survive, to come back to life, to keep making art, because the world isn't a terribly helpful place when it comes to this, and it's not going to help us most of the time. So what I wanted to talk about today, what I wanted to do today, was to focus on this project that Anne approached me about. So the foundation is doing an exhibition. They've asked 100 artists to make art in response to Amos's work. And that's what I would like you to join me in, because I volunteered to do this, to be one of the artists in this exhibition. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought my art form isn't just a sketchbook and isn't just drawing and writing, but it's this, what we're doing now. It's working with creating a community and using all of these tools, the internet and cameras and pens and paper together. And so what I want my art piece to be, my contribution to this to this show is the collaboration between you and me and Amos. I want to take Amos's painting, his self-portrait, because we were asked to pick one of the pieces that resonated with us to make a response to. I want to share that picture with you, and I want us to make art together in response to it. And I want my contribution to this show to be our contribution together. So this video that we're making right now and telling Amos's story and putting it on the internet, that's part of the piece. And the work that we'll make, I'm going to start on mine today. I don't know. I can't imagine that I'll finish it in the time that we have together today, but I certainly want to start thinking about it and looking at it. So I want us to work together on this. And so now that you know a bit about Amos's story, I want to go back and look at this piece again, right? So that is this piece. And say, okay, this is the piece that I chose. This is a self-portrait that I did when he was, I think it was quite young. I mean, obviously everything he did was when he was quite young, but he is, you know, you can see how young he is in his face there. So let's think about it. Like, how do we feel about this story? How do we feel about what we've just learned about him? And what is it we want to do, you know? So that's what I would say. Get out your sketchbook and let's have a look. Let's think about it. You know, I might, 15, yes. He was 15 when he did this. So, and you can see, as I said, you can see all this on his Instagram. You can also see more of it when you go and look at his website, which is linked below. So let's just get to work. Let's just see what we can do. I'm just probably going to start by just drawing what I see, because that's kind of where I start. But then I'll see where that goes. So, what do you want to do? I think what I hope to do with this is to say to ourselves, you know, there are lots of different ways of seeing the world. They're all valid. And we need to celebrate all of them. And we all see things, the same things, differently. You know, that's really what makes life and art interesting, is that there isn't any single approach. And that ultimately, the key to art making isn't perfect technique, isn't your mastery of perspective, or, you know, whether or not you understand how to use your tools really well. All those things come with time. That's not the point. What matters most is authenticity. To tell your story as and make it as true as you can. Nobody's asking you to tell your story. And we don't really have many opportunities in life to tell our stories. And a lot of times our stories are the stories of each of us individually are also the stories of all of us. We share so much, you know, even though we go in different ways. I often find that when I write about my life, and I think, God, you know, is anybody going to be interested in this? It's so specific, you know. My life is the specific life that I led. Is anybody else going to relate to that? My life has had some weird aspects to it. But what I find is that whenever I share a story or I make art that's about some aspect of my story, people say, my life was completely different, but I know what you mean. And we think we're alone in so many ways. And as artists, we often feel like we're alone. And unsupported. And we can feel that to the extent that we don't even want to do the thing that burns within us the most, because we're afraid it's going to get rejected or not understood, or even that it's going to damage us in some way, damage our lives, right? And there are people like Amos who were instantly recognized as, this is what you should be doing. Right? Everybody said that about him and saw instantly, like, this kid should be supported because he's so great. Most of us never had that experience. But it doesn't make our desire to express ourselves any less valid. Like, in some ways, it's easier for people who have that head start. And others have to struggle harder because of it. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't. And it doesn't mean that we won't be able to achieve the thing that we really want to achieve, which is this sense of truth. Yeah, there's some discussion about what the phrase was on the plaque in the garden. Stay alive, make art. I don't know that it was stay alive, make art to stay alive. I don't think that's the message. I think that those are both crucial messages. Those are both things that we should all be doing. And it's terrible that we have to tell people to stay alive. It's terrible. But when you feel hopeless, I don't know, I'm not going to pretend to understand how these things happen to people. I mean, I had people in my life who have mental illness, or have had people in my life who had mental illness. I've felt sometimes gripped by depression and anxiety myself. I think particularly these days, we're all feeling that. Tin Art, you're just starting out, and I see that you're raising your hand to tell us your story. I think what I'm talking about in terms of self-expression and saying what you have to say has nothing to do with how long you've been doing it. I mean, you look at Amos and you see in a year or two, when he was making art, he was accomplishing so much because he was passionate about it. 500 paintings. Van Gogh made about 1,000, but he had a lot longer to do it. We went to this experience here in Phoenix this last week. It was, I forget what it was called, Virtual Van Gogh. Was it Virtual Van Gogh? Something like that. It was this sort of experiential thing that you go into a giant room and they projected images taken from Van Gogh's paintings onto the wall. And a lot of them had effects in them that made them feel, sort of surreal, in the sense of undulating and moving. So there was, flowers and stars, and they're all spread across the room, and they're all moving around. And I can't tell you how many conversations I heard people have about, that's probably how Van Gogh saw it. that's probably how he saw the world, that as if Van Gogh was like constantly walking around hallucinating. And the idea was that's why he made this great art, because that's really what he was seeing. I don't know. I'm not Van Gogh. I've read a fair amount about him. I've looked at his paintings many, many times. And I don't think that's literally what he was seeing in the world. Again, this idea that like, you'd have to be a crazy artist to be able to make that stuff, or no wonder we can't do it. And that is not only not true and insulting, frankly, but also it continues with this business of making artists into others. They're not normal. And the tragedy of that is that, first of all that artists are doing is expressing what we all feel. That's all that's going on with them. But also, when we think that they're other, how do we respond to it? It's as if you're dealing with another species. And the whole point of it is to say we all feel this way, not just weird whack jobs, but all of us. We all feel these feelings, we all see these things, or don't see them and need to see them. And, that's why we respond to this stuff. And a lot of times, we don't respond to it in words. If we allow ourselves to look at art and absorb it and let it move us, it takes us to places that are very difficult to articulate. Like, why is it that we feel that way? Why is it that we we're experiencing something we haven't experienced before through looking at this stuff, looking at this ink and this oil paint on canvas? Like, why is it making us feel emotions? That's the power of it. And you can't reduce it to words, but it's designed for all of us. And if our society wasn't so wrong-headed about so many things, those people who had that ability to help us to see clearly, those people would be the celebrated ones. They wouldn't be pariahs. You would say, that person's incredibly important. What could be more important than somebody who sees clearly and tells us what we can and should see, right? I mean, that's so powerful and so valuable. Why treat those people as if what they're doing is not relevant to us, or is somehow different, or is other? Those are the people we need to support the most. Those are the people who help us to see solutions to problems that affect us all. And in this world that we're living in now, where we have so many problems that need creative solutions, pandemics, climate change, division, all those things, how to deal with all this change, we need creative solutions more than ever. We don't need power. We need fresh ideas. We need people who can look at what is going on and see it for what it is and see a way out of it. It's easy to critique and destroy, but that's not terribly valuable. What we need is opportunities to come up with new ideas to get us out of the woods. And so the people who can do that easily, and the skills that they possess to accomplish those things, are an incredible resource that we need to tap into. And that's why we need to be teaching art in schools and supporting art teachers, and giving out scholarships and celebrating artistic accomplishment, not just the money that you make in selling a painting. And we need to have discussions about these things. You know, we need geniuses. Right now we celebrate technology geniuses, technology creativity, which is a form of creativity. It's often tied to money making, but we need to expand that. It's not to say that artists are going to solve pandemics, but maybe they will. Maybe they'll give us insights into it, into how to confront massive change, which is essentially what a pandemic is. It's an incredible unexpected change in our world. So if we're open to the idea of change and we're resilient, well, those are the powers that art can give us. And if we have that skill, then we'll be more flexible and more responsive and more able to come up with solutions to problems. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm lecturing to you. You just wanted to sit and draw. You didn't need some blowhard telling you everything that you should or shouldn't do. But I don't know. I think if Amos had been a gifted football player, it might have been a different discussion. The world would be celebrating him. Another thing I wanted to mention is the experience that Amos's parents had is the worst experience anybody could possibly imagine having. I mean, I know it as a parent. I'm sure you can imagine it whether you're a parent or not. This couldn't be anything worse that could happen to you. And it could completely unmoor you, completely destroy your ability to function. And what I thought was so amazing about the response that I saw in the two of them was that, of course, they mourned and grieved, but they immediately turned to celebration of what Amos was and what he could do, and looked for ways to turn that power that they saw in him into a power for good to help other people, you know? And I just have such respect for that, but also just, it really touched me, the idea that you can take this tragedy that happens to you and you can make it into a force for change and positivity. And that they celebrate what was great about Amos, you know, instead of his story just becoming one of tragedy and loss, it becomes, you know, a new beginning for other people and an example for others to say, yeah, maybe this is what I need to do and this is what I need to value. And they were lucky because they, you know, they understood the importance of art in their own lives, and they also were supportive of the challenges that he was going through. They understood that firsthand. So, again, Amos had so much support, and in spite of that, he suffered and ultimately succumbed to it. And I'm sure they thought, if our kid, who had every resource and every opportunity to overcome these challenges, couldn't do it, what about all those kids who don't have that? How do we help them? And money is one thing, time is another, but I think a key thing is also just understanding, the empathy, to understand it, not to think of people with emotional problems as other or as problematic, but to treat people with empathy and to see what you can do to help them or support them at least. I think it's interesting. While I'm talking to you, it's like I'm like two people right now. This drawing, I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel like as I'm talking about Amos and what I've gotten out of his story, my hand is just doing this drawing without really thinking about it. Not sure that's a bad thing. Maybe it's like a weird channeling thing. Anne was telling me yesterday that one of Amos's friends gets visited by him while he's sleeping every night in dreams. And he said that a couple days ago he didn't show up in his dream, and his friend was worried about it. But then the next night, Amos did show up, and he said, "Sorry, I couldn't be here last night. I had to go to orientation." There's a video which I linked to below that was made about him and his art and his story, and his dad tells this story at the end about Amos being on the beach, and there were a lot of starfish that had been washed up on the beach, and he was picking them up and throwing them back into the water. And someone said, "What's the point? What difference does it make? There's so many of them. What difference does it make?" And Amos said, holding one of the starfish, "It makes a difference to this one." I think that's just a beautiful encapsulation of, problems can seem so enormous that we think, what can we possibly do? How can we possibly make a difference? But we do it by making an effort to help in some small way. And if enough of us do it, it makes a big difference. Yeah. I wish I could follow along with your comments. That would be a third version of me I would need to have. But it's like, I'll have to read them later on, see what you guys are saying. Hopefully I'm not taking you down any paths you don't want to go. But I'm curious to see what you guys are doing also in terms of the art that you're making. I mean, I'm being a little bit literal here, in that I'm responding right to this painting. I don't even know if that's what I've never been asked to respond to a work of art before in this way. So I don't really know whether I'm doing it right. But maybe you do, and maybe it doesn't really matter. That's the most likely scenario, is it really doesn't matter. Because honestly, I think what matters is I'm feeling and I'm thinking about it while I'm doing it. and stuff is happening, stuff is going on. I don't really have any plan for it. It's funny, I made a video a couple days ago called What I Think About When I Draw. And it was just an interesting question to ask myself, like, should I be thinking more? Should I be having plans for all this? You know, is it okay to just kind of go at it and see what happens? You can watch the video and figure out what my conclusion was. But yes. All right, see, I'm trying to catch up with the conversation. What would be the best quote to add to our drawing today? That's a good question. I like the idea that you would put a quote. You know, actually, I wonder if I can pull this up. Yeah, so I saw this a couple days ago. I thought it was interesting. I wanted to write about it, but I'll share it with you now, and then maybe I won't write about it. But so this is oops, sorry, what's going on? This is an Instagram post from Naomi Osaka. You know who she is, right? Tennis player who pulled out of the U.S. Open and has been wrestling with depression and other stuff. And this is what she wrote. Maybe you've seen this already, but she said, "I've been reflecting over this past year, so grateful for the people around me because the support I feel is completely unparalleled. Recently, I've been asking myself, why do I feel the way I do? And I realized that one of the reasons is because internally, I think I'm never good enough." This is Naomi Osaka, highest paid athlete in the world. "I've never told myself that I've done a good job. But I do know I constantly tell myself that I suck or I could do better. I know in the past some people have called me humble, but if I really consider it, I think I'm extremely self-deprecating. Every time a new opportunity arises, my first thought is, wow, why me? I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to try to celebrate myself and my accomplishments more. I think we all should. You get up in the morning and didn't procrastinate on something? Champion. Figured something out at work that's been bugging you for a while? Absolute legend. Your life is your own, and you shouldn't value yourself on other people's standards. I know I give my heart to everything I can, and if that's not good enough for some, then my apologies, but I can't burden myself with those expectations anymore. Seeing everything that's going on in the world, I feel like if I wake up in the morning, that's a win. That's how I'm coming." Yeah, that's sad. I mean, it seems like this is an opportunity for her to have a change in direction with her thinking, but it's so sad that she has gotten to this place. And I think it happens so much. It happens so much. And I think, and this has nothing to do with Naomi Osaka, but I think that making art and expressing yourself, even if it's expressing pain and sorrow and loss and loneliness and confusion, if you can express it in some way, when you do, you put it outside of your head. You pull it outside of your head. There may still be bits of it in there. It's not like a vacuum cleaner, but you pull it out of your head and you put it on paper. And when you do, you can see it because it's outside. It's not just a swirl of voices in your head. It's not just emotions and feelings. It's now externalized as well. And that can give you some perspective on it. That can give you, a way of gaining some control over it, I think. I find it does. And I think when we talk about making art that expresses how you feel, it doesn't have to be as literal as writing it down or making the images up, but it can be just being gripped by the feeling as you make art. You're probably gripped by the feeling anyway, but if you allow that feeling to be in you while you're making art, that art will be suffused with that feeling and it will kind of absorb it out. So yes. Or you could be like Naomi and just celebrate every accomplishment. I did a drawing today. I put on pants. Whatever it was you did. By the way, if you want to keep working on this drawing and you want to keep looking at this image, we have a sort of like mini blog as part of our YouTube thing. It's under the word community. If you go there, this picture is there too. And you can see a bigger version of it if you want to kind of zoom in and look at it in more detail. So yeah. All right. I want to keep working on this, but I don't want to keep working on it while I'm doing a YouTube thing. So I will keep going, and I don't know, maybe I'll go through this whole experience again on my own, but I really like the fact that I was doing it while you were doing it. I feel like that, as I said, this part of me that was doing this, my hand, I wasn't thinking. I don't know if that's a good thing, but that was when it was happening. I wasn't thinking. So let me carry on. All right, I'm going to wrap it up so that I really want to see what you're doing. So let me just come back here. Again, you can go and look at the reference elsewhere, but I'm going to come back now. So what I want you to do, if you're willing to share this, is I'd like you to do a few things. One thing is I'd like you to take a photograph of your art, a good photograph, not like out of focus and badly lit and the cat in the corner of it. Just take a nice picture that respects your art. And I want you to post it on social media. You can post it in the schoolyard, the sketchbook schoolyard, that's fine. But I would also like you to post it on social media. And I'd like you to tag it with both of these tags, hashtag SBS Draw With Me and hashtag Amos Lemon Art. Okay? If you've never used a hashtag before, it just means that you type that into the post somewhere. If you do this and share it on social media and maybe write a sentence or two about this experience today or about Amos and his art, or you could link to his website or to his Instagram, put a little bit of effort into it, because this is, I think, a very important message to get out there in the world. To celebrate and to support young artists, to try and reduce the stigma of mental disorders, to take that away or to diminish it, so that, and also to make it clear that that we need to be empathetic and we need to support people. That may be a lot of stuff to put into a Facebook post, but I want you to think about that. I think as artists, this is part of our responsibility, which is to make the world a better place. And this is a really important way of doing it, to support other artists and to support people in need, and to use our art to do it, and to use our platforms to do it. So I hope that you will do that. And also go and check out the foundation. If you'd like to support the foundation, that would be awesome. That's part of the reason that we're doing this and contributing this art, is to support the foundation, because they're gonna sell it, and they're gonna give the proceeds to the scholarship foundations and so forth. So yeah, there's a really great article that you can also find, which was in, where was it? It was in bctv.org, and you can learn more about Amos and about the foundation. There's just a lot of stuff, and they're doing exhibitions of his work now, like not in churches at memorial services, but actually out there, and also using it as a springboard for talking about these issues. So, hey, thanks very much for joining me. Next week, I promise you, we will draw something more lighthearted, perhaps, but also I'd like to, continue to try to provoke you when it comes to matters of art. So we'll get together again then, and I'll hopefully be able to show your piece in tribute to Amos as well as those of others at the beginning of the show. So thank you again for joining me. Thank you for listening to this whole diatribe, and for most of all for collaborating with me on making art, for drawing with me. And that is, it really is encouraging and supportive to me, and I hope it is to you as well. So thanks a lot. I'll see you guys next week. Have a good day, and thanks for being here today too. See y'all later.